A California court has dismissed a lawsuit from a group of fishermen against a conservation group that added New England lobster to its list of seafood to avoid. The lawsuit stemmed from a decision by Seafood Watch to add American and Canadian lobster fisheries to its red list of species to avoid in 2022. The Massachusetts fishermen sued last year, but court filings from last week state all parties involved have agreed to dismiss the lawsuit. The aquarium's red listing also attracted another lawsuit from a coalition of Maine lobster industry groups last year. That lawsuit, filed in U.S. District Court in Maine, is awaiting review by a judge. The red listing resulted in some national retailers removing lobster products from their inventories.